What is up everyone, and welcome back to Too Much Tech. And in today's video we're going to be reviewing this custom keyboard. This is the Durock Carina. It's supposed to be one of the more budget entries from Durock. It starts at $120, but you have to add a plate, which really makes it $140 or more depending on the plate that you get. I went with the aluminum plate and I like it quite a bit, but this board is not completely perfect. But it's okay. It's not bad for the price, I would say, but it could be a little bit better and a little bit cheaper. I'll go ahead and get this out of the way real quick as well. So for the build, we went obviously with the Durock Carina, the aluminum plate, some Durock Pom switches that I went with from Prevail Key Company. Huge shout out to them for sending them out, as well as the Artifact Bloom gradient keycap set from Durock. In terms of the build quality, you have a frosted aluminum case that looks pretty good. It looks very similar to the TOFU case, except you do have these angles coming up from the bottom of the keyboard that give it just a little bit more of a unique look, and it is a 60% layout as well. So the way that your PCB gets mounted, you mount the PCB, then you attach the top plate and screw it in to hold them together, and the build process is very quick. Probably should take you no longer than about 5 minutes until you go with lubing your stabilizers, because that does take a little bit longer. Now the stabilizers that were included, I just opted not to use those because I've heard so many bad things about drop stabilizers. So Prevail Key Company also sent over some of the new Durock stabilizers as well, and I've been using them for the past couple of weeks because at first when I tried them I didn't really like them. Then I re-lubed them again and they sounded a little bit better. These were actually pre-clipped as well, so it saved me a bit of time, and they're not bad. So if you're looking for some new stabilizers after you listen to the sound test at the end of the video, I'll have Prevail Key Company linked in the description for you guys. But getting back to the Durock Carina, I think that the build quality is pretty decent. The frosted aluminum case looks very good in my opinion, and the RGB shine is very nice as well. You do have underglow and per key RGB lighting as well that you can control through QMK and drops like QMK configurator and all that stuff, and it is pretty complicated to use, so I do plan on doing a dedicated video on how to properly configure your Durock Carina, and I believe that it will probably apply to the alt and control as well, so look out for that video within the next couple of weeks. Underneath the keyboard there is a reset button as well. If you need to quickly reset your keyboard back to the factory settings, you just use a little pin and you can press and hold that button for a couple of seconds and it'll reset your keyboard back to factory. You really only need that when you start to play with the QMK configurator and you're not really having much success. You just want to switch it back and reset all the keybinds. That's what that little port is good for. But again, wait for my tutorial. I'll show you guys how to do all that. One unique thing that I do enjoy about Durock boards is that they do have a USB-C port on both sides of the keyboard, which is pretty nice. So if you want to connect your cable to either of those ports, they both work just fine. It doesn't feature pass-through, so you can't, use it to plug in another device and have the information go back and forth to your PC back from the device. But it is nice that you are able to plug in your keyboard on either the left or right side of the board. Personally, I prefer it to just be on the left side of the board, so I don't really use the USB port on the right side of the PCB. But if you want to switch it up for pictures for the gram, be my guest. I do really enjoy the sound profile of this solid acrylic board as well. Like, it's not incredibly deep or hollow because the acrylic at the bottom of the board actually comes up quite a bit, and there's not much room between the base of the acrylic board and the PCB, so you don't really have much resonance or echo within the case, which makes it feel just a little bit more premium than it is. But not to say that this board doesn't feel cheap, because overall acrylic boards typically do feel pretty cheap, but the fact that it is one solid piece of acrylic does make it feel slightly more premium than say something like a stacked acrylic board. I don't think that stacked acrylic boards are bad per se, but of course they don't feel as premium as if they were just one piece or compared to a metal board. But the acrylic does feel more premium than something like the polycarbonate on the Novelty 65, and more than likely I'll assume the Portico from TKC, because even though those boards are polycarbonate, it's really just a fancy way of saying plastic, and it is nice, higher quality plastic, but it still feels like plastic. I do feel like the tolerances of the plate for the hot swap PCB are a little bit tight, so you may have to work just slightly harder to pull out your switches, and I'm really glad that obviously you don't have to solder this board, because you can use this nice budget-ish, not really, board to try out a bunch of different switches, figure out what sound profile you like for your switch, and even try a ton of different keycaps as well, because I picked up this board because I needed something solid for testing a lot of switches, and obviously with not too many keys, so I could pull out the switches and keycaps pretty quickly and do a lot of different sound tests for you guys that I do have coming up this year. The one thing that I can say is the biggest downfall of this board, other than it not being VIA compatible, is the fact that this board does not have screw-in stabilizer support. So the plate does obviously support, plate mounted or clip-in stabilizers, and honestly, what I've been figuring out over the past like couple months is just that clip-in stabilizers are just not very good, and I don't like them anymore. It's nice that, you know, you can customize it if a board is hot swap and pretty cheap and reasonable, but the problem is screw-ins are just better. So when the V2 of the Drop Carina comes out, I would love to see a screw-in stabilizer PCB, and I feel like that would justify the higher cost of this board just a little bit more compared to, you know, some other 60% acrylic boards. Even though technically most of the TOFU boards are solder PCB, you know, the hot swap functionality definitely does have some merit. I'm pretty sure that there is some variant of the TOFU60% PCB that is hot swap and supports screw-in stabilizers. I could be wrong, and I'm actually trying to find it myself because I will probably buy it in the near future if I can find it. If you guys know where it is, link in the description below, because I'm really interested in trying it out. And I'm pretty sure that since it's a TOFU, it's probably very similarly priced to the Carina, maybe even slightly cheaper. So with that being said, I feel like it not having those screw-in stabilizers really drops it down quite a bit. Not to mention that typically the stabilizers that Drop includes in the box are not very good, and I would have to buy my own, would also further increase the cost of your overall build. Now, without talking about the nitpicks, once you properly mod your stabilizers, Band-Aid mod, all that stuff really helps the sound profile of the stabilizers, and I'm not really gonna harp too much on the fact that they're not screw-in too much for the rest of this review. But otherwise, using the Drop Carina has been really good. I have used it with a variety of switches over the past couple of months that I've owned it, and recently I've been using these Durock Pom switches. It's like a Novel Keys Cream competitor, and basically how I see it is that these don't have the same sound profile as Creams. They sound quite a bit different, even though they are both made of like a very similar material. But the biggest thing that I noticed is that the spring in the Durock Poms is a lot heavier to use. So I will be spring swapping these in the future to probably some 55 or 60 gram springs, because the springs that are used in the Durock Pom switches are really heavy, and I noticed it especially during gameplay when you have to rapidly hit a switch to do a command or chain of commands. It does take a little bit more effort than I would like, but otherwise I think the Durock Pom sound really good. And now we're gonna go ahead and cut to the sound test of the video. But overall, I do like how the Durock Pom switches sound, especially in the Carina. I think they sound pretty good, both with these cherry profile keycaps as well as some OEM profile keycaps from Missile. Some of my favorite keycaps that you can find on Amazon for about $50 as well. I do prefer the double shot PBT as opposed to the die sub PBT keycaps. But more or less for $140, do I think the Drop Carina is worth it? I feel like it would be a little bit fair priced at $120 total, like including an aluminum plate. And then, you know, if you want to swap it out and upgrade it for a little bit more, I do feel like that price would be justified. But once you start to, you know, do $140 for the aluminum plate and the Drop Carina plus shipping, now you're at $150. Now you got to buy switches, keycaps, blah, blah, blah. The screw-in stabilizers aren't there. So it really just starts to add up, and then you kind of start to, you know, think to yourself, is this keyboard really worth it? And should I have just bought a TOFU, even though the design of this board looks a little bit better in my opinion than the TOFU? I kind of still want to buy TOFU now. I thought that this would kind of alleviate that. and I'm probably still gonna buy one. So I don't really feel like that was a successful mission for the drop Carina. They really need those better stabilizers. And the fact that drop boards do not support VIA is really annoying. Trying to change your RGB profiles, your functions for the keyboard is just really irritating, and it takes way too long. So I now have to make another video to show you guys how to properly set up this board if you are interested in it. And honestly, I need to make a video so that I can reference it, so that when I forget how to do it, I have it in one place and that's easy to follow along. So much work. What is a good way to describe the drop Carina? It's an okay board, kind of pricey, but it takes a lot of work to make it sound this good. But with that being said, that's where I'm going to end this video. If you guys enjoy, feel free to drop a like and subscribe if you guys are new to the channel as well. If after everything that I said, sound test that you've seen after a ton of hours went into this keyboard build, feel free to let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I will have the drop Carina link in the description as well. But thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and join my Discord server as well, and I will see you guys in the next video.